What's happening, folks? So, this is going to be part 2 of what makes an outdoorsman. And today I wanted to talk about vehicles. So, what do you drive? What's in your vehicle that's ready for adventure? I know a lot of people that family life, they're in a minivan and take out the seats and they sleep in the back and they can explore places, but they're limited to basically a maintained dirt road, and that's all the adventure they need. I've done quite a bit of traveling, lived several locations over the United States. Living out west, in the Rocky Mountains, you learn, when the weather comes in, they shut the highways down. You got to be prepared. There's multiple times I've ended up spending the night in the truck because the roads were too bad. Even having four-wheel drive, they wouldn't let you through. There's times where they let you through, but if you got stuck, you were on your own. So, the vehicle choice is really big in what you're able to pursue for your adventures. What works for you. You've seen my previous videos. I have the Bronco. And I can sleep in it if I had to. It hauls plenty of gear. It's got a V8 engine. It'll pull. It's set up with bigger tires, the winch. So it's ready for more exploration and more adventures than most people. Okay, you got the Jeep crowd, which 30, 40, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, Jeeps, Scouts, and Broncos, that was the essence of adventure. You can still look up Jeep commercials or the early Bronco, look up commercials. You can find them on YouTube. But the things you could do and the places you could go in a Jeep, and I've always loved Jeeps for their size. You're limited on capacity, how much you can carry, so you got to learn to pack lighter and smaller. But a Jeep is an amazing adventure vehicle. I love Jeeps. I'm not really a fan of the Jeep crowd, the new culture. The whole duck thing and the LED lights, I don't understand. But each to their own. So that's why I've always typically stuck with a Bronco. Plus the ability to have a V8 engine, versus just a straight 6. Yes, I know, in the older Jeeps you could get the 304. And they just weren't as reliable and as powerful as, a 289 or a 302 in a Ford Bronco. My current Bronco has the 351. Sucks on fuel mileage, but it has plenty of power. So, when I go to Pennsylvania, and I'm up there for the 2 weeks for hunting season, or, 4 or 5 days for trout season, the dynamics changed up there. So most of the crowd and most of the people you see are out of Pittsburgh. So there's a lot of brand new Chevys and a lot of brand new Fords. Just the 4-wheel drive, F-150 or the Silverado. 4-door truck, short bed. They're pulling a trailer with their gear, or, pulling a quad, whatever. Some of them have a little bit better tire than what comes on the factory truck. A lot don't. They're just a stock four-wheel drive truck. Gets them up there to their camp and their hunting area in the wintertime. And that works for them. It's their daily commuter. I look at things a little differently. I don't want a big truck payment. So save up, buy something older and cheaper, with cash, and I have multiple vehicles to choose from. And I'm not saying the multiple vehicle is an option for everybody. Parking space, insurance, everything else, there's a lot of variables to this. But my current position and situation affords me the ability to have multiple. So I have a 1-ton dually. It's a diesel. Don't drive it a lot, but if I really need to pull something, or if I want to go on a long adventure, it's set up for road trips. It's not four-wheel drive. I put a cap on it. I'm making a little camper for the back of it. I made a bed. I'm going to outfit it. And, probably next spring, next summer, I'll use it for a few trips. But I have the ability, if I wanted to put a Jeep or a Bronco on a trailer, I can travel in the dually, camp out of it, and, have an adventure vehicle in case, I break, whatever. The difference in fuel mileage and the ability. So there's a lot of variables there. You've seen the Bronco in other videos. It's set up. My youngest daughter, thought she wanted a Jeep. She bought one. Doesn't like Jeeps. She bought another car. So I'm taking over the Jeep from my daughter. And I'm setting it up so that it's better on fuel mileage than the Bronco by far. The Bronco gets about 9 miles to the gallon. An older Wrangler with 4-liter straight 6. I'm at about that 15, 16 if it's loaded down and I'm pulling a trailer or whatever. And then you've seen my little car, 25, 30 miles to the gallon. I can sleep in the back, throw the canoe on top. So I think ultimately, and everything's a toss-up. Do you need to pull a trailer? Do you need just the fuel mileage? What are you looking for in a vehicle? Like I said, after living out west, in the Rocky Mountains, you need a 4-wheel drive, because that's just an insurance policy. When the weather comes in, you never know what the snow's going to do. You want to take a Jeep trail, you want to go explore. So personally, all of my vehicles are 4-wheel drive. Except for my little car, that's front-wheel drive. And like I said, it's limited by season to where I can take it and how I can use it. So in the spring and summer, even into the fall, it's perfect. The fuel mileage is really economical, and it opens up a lot more possibilities in my travel and adventures. Having the Jeep or the Bronco, I got to plan out the adventure and have the fuel money. That's a huge factor. So I think if you didn't have to worry about towing and a trailer, right now, the way things are with our economy and society, and just reliability and dependability, I think the ultimate off-road or adventure vehicle for the outdoorsman would be a Toyota Tacoma. If you get the 2-door, extended cab with the 6-foot bed, put a cap on it, you can carry a canoe. The little 4-cylinder engine with the automatic transmission One of my buddies has a 2016, and he's getting 25 miles to the gallon. So he has a four-wheel drive that does just as well as my little car. So I think that would be the perfect vehicle. The 6-foot bed, you can make a pickup bed camper unit out of it, sleep in it, haul your gear, with a cap, and be able to throw a canoe on top. You could travel, sleep in the back, have your adventures. And his is stock with street tires, and it's quite capable off-road. For mud and, just not anything extreme, but for a general four-wheel drive, it does very well, even with the street tires. I was actually impressed. We were exploring some dirt roads in Pennsylvania one weekend, and the trail we were on was a logging road, so there were some deep ruts and mud holes, and I was actually quite impressed with the ability of that vehicle in stock form with street tires. So which is kind of where I'm keeping the Jeep. Stock. I'm not putting a lift on it. I'm not putting lockers or anything like that. Street tires to a very mild all-terrain tire. If you watched my video from last winter, I did the street tires, and it did well on the road with the snow, but when I got off-road into the 6-8 inches of snow and I fell through, it almost got stuck, and I really wish I had a winch, and it took a lot of effort to get up and out of that snow. So the good snow tires for street use are not good snow tires for off-road use. It needs something a little more aggressive. So I just picked up a set. I might do some experimenting with them as this weather turns, into snow season. But I've been using the Jeep the last few weeks, or month or so, and really trying to pack smaller and lighter and still have a lot of fun. Last weekend, I had the canoe on the trailer. My back just wasn't up for throwing it on the roof. I did invest in a hardtop. Well, my daughter did, and so we got a hardtop for the Jeep, so it holds heat better than the soft top. The road noise isn't as horrible, and I have the ability to put a small canoe on the roof. I did drill holes and sealed them, but I put eye bolts on top for the ratchet straps to hold the canoe. Space in a Jeep is quite limited, so I ran 550 cord around the roll bar, and my fishing poles are just suspended. I have 3 tiers of string across, so keep the fishing poles up and high, and I have about 5 foot length inside the Jeep, 5.5 foot, so short fishing poles, keep them suspended. I don't have to break them down or anything like that. Next video, I'll show how I pack the Jeep, took out the back seat, and what gear I have in the Jeep for adventure. And I've done a previous video on the totes and what I keep in the vehicles, for recovery, for emergency, etc. So I think, what makes an outdoorsman, because I live by the motto, if life is time and money, and if actions speak louder than words, everybody knows those sayings. So if life is time and money, and actions speak louder than words. Where you invest your time or your money shows of your true character. So, being an outdoorsman to me is a lifestyle. I went through the phase of raising kids and getting out, maybe a weekend a month, or maybe just pheasant season and a couple fishing trips. I've been through that. I understand it. Now my kids are older. I'm able to do more. So my situation is drastically improved in the sense that I have more freedom. My time isn't restricted to raising small kids, which that's part of my situation that affords me the option of a few multiple vehicles. So what makes an outdoorsman? To me, it's a lifestyle. If actions speak louder than words, where you invest your time or your money shows your character. So I feel having the ability and the willingness to always be ready for an adventure, and having the lifestyle that supports that. I always have a vehicle ready. I always have a vehicle packed. I usually have a $50 bill or a $100 bill put back for fuel and a couple cans of soup. So I'm always ready for an adventure. So what motivates you? Do you just want to go hunting? And is it a couple times a year? Are you trying to go fishing every weekend? What type of exploring are you doing? What vehicle is going to suit you the best? I think, something good on fuel mileage and four-wheel drive opens up more adventure. So I'm here at a local park today. It's a rainy day. It's kind of chilly in Ohio. Kind of weird. Early September. Feels like October. The leaves are changing. The leaves are falling. But as I was doing some fishing earlier before it started raining, you have a gentleman that's out there set up and fishing, and he's got 3 poles going, a little stool, a big tackle box, a bait bucket, a fish bucket. He's all set up, and he's in it for the long haul for the day. And nobody else was in the park, so process of elimination, the vehicle there would be his, and it's a newer Toyota Camry. But here he is, out fishing all day. So does being an outdoorsman require a 4-wheel drive? No. But I think it's the sense of adventure and the sense of preparedness that a 4-wheel drive will suit you better. If you got to buy the minivan for the kids and drive that back and forth to work during the week because, work and shuttling kids and everything else, that you get by with what you have. You make the best of it. If you can afford a cheap 4-wheel drive that you can set up, even if you use it once a month or, every couple of months or maybe a week for, hunting season, or you take a fishing trip, but you at least have the 4-wheel drive and you're prepared, come bad weather where the minivan's not going to make it. Come your adventure. I was camping one time in Colorado, 70 degrees, 75 degrees. I'm walking through the creek in a pair of cut-off shorts, barefoot, catching trout. Go up the mountain. Well, I was already up the mountain. I was at a decent elevation, 7,000 feet. Went to a different spot, dropped into this valley. A really, really cool camping spot, and you got a good chance of seeing moose there. Well, it went into the 30s that night out of nowhere, woke up to 8 inches of snow, and without having a four-wheel drive, would have been stuck there. And it still took an hour to get out of that valley up to the main road, and then still the main roads were closed. Normally that would have been a 2.5 hour drive from where I was living, and it took a day because of all the road closures and the amount of snow and snow drifts and everything else. It literally took me a day to get home. Having the truck prepared, had my camping gear, obviously, but I had an extra cook's, not an extra cook set, but I had my camping gear that I kept in the truck. But I had extra bottled water and a couple cans of soup. And of course an extra blanket and an extra coat, things like that. Just having the truck stocked and prepared, where I didn't just take the food that I needed for the camping trip. Having a little bit extra just in case, well, that was one of those situations where it paid off. A couple hours to get out of the valley and out of the campground up to the highway, and then a day to get home because of the traffic and the weather and the road closures and everything. And yeah, living in the East, you don't have that. But with the way the weather's changing, so many things can happen. It never hurts to be prepared. So, what makes an outdoorsman? What do you have on you that you're ready and prepared? What type of vehicle? Well, let me back up. What do you have on you and what makes you prepared? What type of adventure and passion are you pursuing? What's your hobby? What's your adventure? And what type of vehicle is best going to get you to that adventure? And it's all a lifestyle choice. So, I know I'm kind of rambling and going back and forth. Not gonna lie, if you knew me personally, I'm a squirrel. My mind is everywhere. So, I hope this gives you guys some thought. Please leave some comments. Let me know your thoughts. Challenge my ideas or offer suggestions. What works best for you. I would like to know what works best. And what type of adventures do you pursue, and how do you best enjoy them? So let me know, and I hope everybody has a great day.